Men are done with the nonsense. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing the world you thought you knew has quietly shifted beneath your feet. For decades, society pushed a certain story about men and women, about what each side owed the other, and about how relationships were supposed to work. Now, that story is unraveling in plain sight. Men have stepped back, not out of anger, but out of a calm recognition that the old rules no longer serve them. They have chosen solitude over constant negotiation, peace over performance, and self respect over endless pursuit. Women who once confidently declared that men were optional are now confronting the full weight of that declaration. And the silence they receive in return is louder than any argument ever was. What happens when an entire generation of men simply stops playing a game that was rigged against them from the start? Stay with me through this entire discussion because the patterns we are seeing today are not temporary trends. They reveal something fundamental about human nature, about incentives, about consequences, and about the quiet power of walking away that will shape the coming years in ways few people are willing to admit. If you are enjoying these angry guy videos and the honest look at the realities men face today, you can show your support by buying me a Red Bull using the link in the description of this video. It helps keep the conversations going and the content coming. Let us begin by looking at the situation as it actually stands rather than how anyone wishes it to be. For years, men heard the message loud and clear. They were told they were not truly needed in the ways previous generations had been needed. Their natural ways of being, their drive to build, to provide, to lead with quiet competence were reframed as problems to be fixed or traits to be managed. Terms were invented to describe ordinary male behavior as somehow oppressive or intrusive. Spaces that men once occupied comfortably became minefields of potential misunderstanding. Workplaces introduced layers of caution that made everyday interaction feel like walking on glass. Social settings that used to allow organic connection turned into arenas where one wrong glance or word could be captured, shared, and used to damage a reputation permanently. Men listened. They are not irrational beings who ignore repeated signals. When the consistent message was that their presence was optional at best and problematic at worst, many began to internalize that message and act accordingly. They did not storm out in dramatic fashion. Instead, they quietly redirected their energy toward things they could control, things that rewarded effort without requiring constant emotional negotiation or financial extraction. Video games offered clear objectives, measurable progress, and satisfying conclusions. Hobbies provided tangible results. Solitude brought a surprising sense of calm once the noise of expectation died down. Being alone, it turned out, was not the same as feeling lonely when a man has made peace with himself and stopped outsourcing his sense of worth to external validation. This shift did not happen overnight. It built gradually as pattern after pattern became impossible to ignore. Men noticed that relationships often came with unspoken scorekeeping. They saw how effort flowed primarily in one direction, while appreciation flowed sparingly or not at all. They observed situations where financial contribution was expected as a baseline, yet emotional labor, loyalty, and long term commitment were treated as negotiable. Stories circulated of men who worked hard, built stability, and still found themselves starting over after separations that left them financially drained and emotionally cautious. Courts and social norms seemed designed to penalize the provider role while celebrating independence until the moment that independence created inconvenience for the other side. Men began to trust what they saw more than what they were told. They watched as social media filled with declarations that women were strong and independent and did not need men, followed shortly afterward by complaints that good men had disappeared. They heard the insistence that traditional roles were outdated, followed by frustration when no one stepped up to fulfill those same roles in moments of need. They noticed how compliments that once built connection were now scrutinized for hidden motives. They saw how simple gestures of politeness were sometimes reframed as pressure or expectation. Each observation added another layer to the growing realization that the incentives had changed and the risks had increased while the rewards had diminished. As men withdrew their attention and effort from the dating marketplace, a new dynamic emerged. Women who had grown accustomed to being pursued found themselves in an environment where pursuit was rare. Men who once approached with optimism now calculated the potential downside of any interaction and often decided the upside was not worth the exposure. The fear was not primarily rejection. Rejection is part of life, and most men have learned to handle it. The deeper concern was the asymmetry of consequences. A misinterpreted comment, a recorded conversation taken out of context, or an accusation made in the heat of emotion could follow a man for years, affecting employment, social standing, and future opportunities. When the downside is potentially catastrophic and the upside is uncertain at best, rational actors reduce their participation. This is not theory. Observable data supports the pattern. Studies have shown significant portions of younger men reporting that they have not approached a woman in person over extended periods. Some have never initiated in that way. The reasons they give are practical: repeated lack of success, heightened awareness of professional and legal risks, and a growing sense that their time and energy yield better returns when invested elsewhere. These are not bitter withdrawals. They are calculated reallocations of far face out of finite resources toward outcomes that actually improve a man's daily life and long-term security. Women began to notice the change in tangible ways. Places that once offered natural opportunities for meeting people felt different. Social events lacked the previous energy of male initiative. Online spaces showed fewer men willing to engage in the performative chasing that had become expected. Dating applications, which once amplified options for women, began to reveal their limitations as men with choices opted for selectivity or minimal investment. The attention that many women had taken for granted became scarce, and scarcity has a way of sharpening focus on what was previously overlooked. One of the more striking manifestations of this shift has been the stories of women turning to hardware stores as potential meeting grounds. Home Depot and similar locations have become symbolic in these discussions because they represent one of the remaining environments where men still gather in noticeable numbers for practical purposes. Men go there to solve concrete problems, to repair, to build, to maintain their own spaces. They are focused on tasks rather than socializing. The environment is functional, not recreational, yet reports have emerged of women deliberately visiting these stores in search of male company, sometimes approaching men who are clearly in the middle of selecting materials or planning projects. Consider what this reveals about the underlying desperation. After years of messages encouraging women to be independent and to create their own fulfillment, after public celebrations of female self sufficiency, after widespread criticism of male spaces and male interests, some women find themselves circling aisles of lumber and tools, hoping for an organic connection that no longer occurs naturally elsewhere. The irony is hard to miss. The very masculinity that was criticized as toxic when expressed in social or professional settings suddenly becomes appealing when it appears in the context of competence and self reliance. A man who knows how to use his hands, who can fix things, who maintains his own environment without needing external rescue, suddenly draws interest precisely because he demonstrates the traits that were once dismissed. These approaches are not always subtle. Accounts describe women following men through the store, initiating conversation in ways that feel intrusive to someone who came for supplies rather than interaction. The discomfort is mutual. Men who have embraced a quieter life are not looking for interruptions during routine errands. They have learned to guard their peace carefully. When a stranger inserts herself into that peace, with clear expectations of attention or pursuit, it can feel less like opportunity and more like an unwelcome demand on limited time and energy. This phenomenon extends beyond hardware stores. Grocery stores have also seen reduced male lingering as men adopt more efficient shopping habits or minimize time in environments where unsolicited interaction feels possible. Gyms, once social hubs, have become places of focused individual effort for many men who prefer headphones and routines over conversation. Bookstores and cafes that used to facilitate casual encounters now host more solitary readers and workers. The pattern is consistent. Men are optimizing their environments for productivity, calm, and self directed activity rather than for meeting romantic expectations. The broader societal backdrop makes this withdrawal understandable. Economic pressures have intensified for everyone. Inflation has raised the cost of basic living. Housing has become more expensive in many areas. Career demands have increased, while work life balance has become harder to achieve. In this environment, men who once shouldered disproportionate financial responsibility in relationships are asking themselves whether that burden still makes sense when the emotional return feels uncertain and the legal protections feel one sided. They see friends and acquaintances who provided steadily only to face unexpected separations that left them supporting two households or starting over with reduced assets. The lesson sinks in. Protect your resources, your time, and your mental space because no one else will protect them for you. Women, facing their own version of these economic realities, sometimes express frustration that the men who once helped buffer those pressures are no longer stepping forward. Comments appear about the difficulty of covering rent, groceries, and other necessities without additional support. Some voices call for men to resume traditional provider roles as if the preceding decades of cultural messaging had not occurred. The disconnect is revealing. It is one thing to reject a role when it suits the narrative of independence. It is another to expect that role to remain available indefinitely once rejected. Actions have consequences, and the consequence here is a generation of men who have internalized the independence message and applied it to themselves with thoroughness. Men who have walked away describe a process of rediscovery. They simplify their lives. Minimalism comes naturally to many because it frees resources for what truly matters to them. They invest in skills that increase their own capability rather than skills designed solely to impress. They build routines that support physical and mental health without external validation. They enjoy hobbies that provide flow states and measurable improvement. Sleep improves, stress decreases, financial margins widen when money is not being spent on dates that lead nowhere or on expectations that never stabilize into mutual commitment. This is not a life of isolation in the negative sense. It is a life of chosen solitude that often includes strong male friendships, meaningful work, and personal projects. Men talk about the relief of no longer walking on eggshells in conversations. They describe the freedom of making decisions based on their own priorities rather than anticipating unspoken tests. They note the satisfaction of completing a project from start to finish without needing approval at every step. Peace, it turns out, is not the absence of conflict so much as the absence of unnecessary conflict created by mismatched expectations. Stories from the other side illustrate the growing awareness of this shift. Women share experiences of extended periods without being approached, even in settings where they have made deliberate effort with appearance and presence. One woman described spending 3 years at a gym without a single man initiating conversation, despite her consistent attendance and presentation. Another recounted a casual encounter with an attractive man who responded with light humor but no pursuit, leaving her unsettled because the expected dynamic of male effort was absent. These moments highlight a key psychological point. When validation that was once reliable becomes scarce, its absence can feel like rejection, even when it is simply neutrality. Dating applications amplify the pattern. Women often report receiving attention, but struggling to convert it into consistent, high effort pursuit from men they consider desirable. Men with options tend to spread their minimal investment across multiple conversations rather than overinvesting in any single prospect. This creates frustration for women who expect the same level of focused attention they might have received in earlier dating environments. The host of one discussion pointed out that men are not heartless in this approach. They are simply applying efficiency to a marketplace where the risks of overinvestment have been made clear through repeated observation. Female psychology in these situations often reveals an interesting tension. Many women express a desire for men who lead decisively, who demonstrate confidence, and who maintain their own frame. Yet when men actually do this by refusing to chase or to compete for attention, the same women sometimes label the behavior as cold or disinterested. The preference seems to be for leadership that still centers the woman's emotional needs above all else. When leadership manifests as self preservation and selective engagement, it can feel threatening to the expectation of constant validation. Consider the story of a woman who described a nearly perfect first date lasting several hours. Conversation flowed easily. Connection seemed genuine, yet when the man did not text within an arbitrary short window afterward, she dismissed the entire interaction as a failure. The expectation was not mutual interest expressed naturally over time. The expectation was immediate and sustained pursuit, despite clear signals of compatibility already exchanged. This pattern repeats in various forms. High initial standards for male effort combined with low tolerance for any deviation from scripted timelines. Men who recognize this dynamic early choose not to invest further, preserving their energy for situations that show clearer reciprocity. Another common narrative involves testing behaviors. A woman might declare a breakup in the middle of an argument, not because she truly wants to end the relationship, but to gauge whether the man will fight to keep her. When he accepts the statement at face value and moves on, shock follows. The test was based on an assumption that male investment is bottomless and that emotional labor to prove worth is unlimited. When men demonstrate healthy boundaries by refusing to beg or chase after mixed signals, the reaction can be disbelief. Healthy boundaries, however, are not cruelty. They are the foundation of any sustainable interaction between adults who respect each other's autonomy. Accountability also surfaces as a recurring theme. In one recounted incident, a woman accused her partner of infidelity based on a piece of trash that was clearly not what she claimed it to be. When the mistake became obvious, no apology followed. Instead, the focus shifted to defending the initial reaction and questioning why the partner was upset. Relationships struggle to survive repeated cycles of unfounded accusation followed by zero accountability. Men who have experienced or witnessed these patterns learn to exit early rather than endure indefinite emotional volatility. The larger cultural conversation includes reflections on past movements and their outcomes. Feminism, in its various waves, emphasized female independence and critiqued traditional male roles. Many of those critiques carried valid observations about imbalances that needed addressing. Yet the pendulum swung far enough that entire generations absorbed the idea that men were inherently problematic and that women could thrive without meaningful male contribution. The lived reality of economic pressure, emotional isolation, and practical challenges has forced a reevaluation for some. Clips surface of women expressing regret over aspects of that independence, admitting a preference for masculine leadership and protection, even while maintaining public commitment to earlier ideals. These admissions are often framed carefully, but the underlying message is consistent. Biology and practical needs have not disappeared, even when ideology suggested they should. Men who have embraced the walkaway path are not celebrating societal difficulty. They are simply refusing to be the default solution to problems created by decades of mixed messaging. They understand that shielding others from reality indefinitely prevents growth on both sides. When men stop inserting themselves as rescuers in every crisis, women gain the opportunity to develop greater resilience and self reliance. When men stop competing for attention that comes with heavy unspoken costs, they reclaim the ability to direct their lives toward genuine fulfillment. This reclamation looks different for different men, but common threads emerge. Many reduce unnecessary expenses and focus on building real assets rather than funding lifestyles that provide no lasting return. They prioritize physical fitness, not to attract fleeting interest, but to maintain health and capability for their own sake. They cultivate skills that increase independence, cooking well, maintaining their living space, managing finances with discipline. They enjoy entertainment that rewards skill and strategy rather than passive consumption designed to fill emotional voids. In short, they become more complete as individuals rather than remaining in a state of perpetual performance for external approval. Society as a whole is still adjusting to this quiet revolution. Media narratives sometimes portray male withdrawal as a problem to be solved rather than a logical response to changed incentives. Articles appear asking where all the good men have gone, as if men have vanished rather than simply stopped volunteering for roles that no longer align with their self interest. Comment sections fill with frustration from women who feel the absence of pursuit, often accompanied by suggestions that men need to change their behavior. Rarely do those suggestions include serious examination of what women themselves might adjust to restore balance. The truth is that balance cannot be restored by demanding that one side resume a previous pattern while the other side maintains all the advantages gained during the shift. Sustainable relationships require mutual value, clear expectations, and genuine respect for boundaries. When one party has spent years framing the other as the source of most problems, trust erodes. When legal and social systems create asymmetric risks, participation declines. When cultural stories celebrate independence until that independence creates loneliness and financial strain, cognitive dissonance becomes difficult to ignore. Men who have found peace in their solitude are unlikely to abandon that peace lightly. They have experienced the difference between being needed and being valued. They understand the difference between being pursued for what they can provide and being appreciated for who they are. Once a man internalizes that distinction, returning to earlier patterns feels like stepping backward into a fog he has already navigated through. The clarity on the other side is too valuable to trade for uncertain promises. Women who genuinely want connection with these men will need to demonstrate something different from past approaches. Entitlement to attention will not work. Demands for traditional provision without corresponding commitment will be recognized quickly. Tests designed to measure endless investment will be declined. Instead, authentic respect for male space, genuine interest in male interests, and willingness to contribute to a mutual dynamic stand a better chance. Even then, many men will remain selective because they have learned that their own company is not a consolation prize, but a positive choice. The economic dimension cannot be overstated. As costs rise, the appeal of single life for men increases proportionally. A man who maintains his own modest but comfortable lifestyle keeps full control of his resources. He can save, invest, travel, or simply enjoy quiet evenings without justifying expenditures to a partner whose preferences may conflict with his. When dating requires covering costs for two while receiving inconsistent appreciation or loyalty in return, the math stops working for many. Self preservation is not selfishness, it is the responsible management of one's own life under current conditions. Stories continue to emerge that illustrate the depth of the shift. Women in their 30s and 40s express surprise that men in similar age groups are content with single life and show little interest in competing for relationships. Some admit they expected to be able to delay serious commitment and still find willing partners when ready. The realization that male willingness has an expiration date based on accumulated experience comes as a shock. Others describe frustration with dating applications where high value men engage minimally or move on quickly when red flags appear. The previous abundance of male attention has given way to selectivity that feels foreign. Younger men are absorbing these lessons earlier than previous generations did. They watch older relatives navigate separations and financial consequences. They see peers who invested heavily only to face accusations or revisions of history years later. They observe cultural narratives that still push certain expectations, while real world outcomes contradict those expectations. Many choose to focus on education, career foundations, fitness, and personal development before even considering relationships. By the time they reach their mid 20s, they already possess the framework for self sufficiency that makes external pressure less effective. This does not mean men have stopped desiring companionship entirely. Human beings are social creatures and connection remains valuable. The difference is in the standards and the willingness to compromise those standards. Men who have experienced or witnessed unhealthy dynamics are less likely to overlook early warning signs. They are more likely to require demonstrated compatibility in values, emotional stability, and reciprocity before investing deeply. The bar has not disappeared. It has been raised based on harder knowledge rather than naive optimism. Women who adapt to this new reality may find opportunities with men who still seek partnership, but those opportunities will require authenticity and effort rather than expectation. Men who remain open to relationships are often those who have built strong lives independently and are looking for someone who enhances that life rather than someone who needs to be rescued from it. The dynamic shifts from savior to teammate, and not every woman is prepared for the accountability that comes with being a true teammate. The Home Depot phenomenon, while sometimes presented with humor, carries a deeper lesson. It shows the extent to which natural meeting places have changed. When women must actively seek out male dominated functional spaces to find potential partners, it indicates that the previous social ecosystem has broken down. Men are not hiding. They are simply occupying spaces that serve practical purposes rather than romantic ones. Approaching them in those spaces risks turning a place of calm productivity into another arena of negotiation, which further encourages men to limit their time there or to maintain stricter boundaries. Gyms provide another example. Many men now train with focused intensity, avoiding small talk and maintaining distance. This is not hostility, it is efficiency. When previous attempts at friendly conversation led to discomfort or misinterpretation, the rational response is to minimize casual interaction. Women who complain about being ignored in these environments often miss that the ignoring is equal opportunity. Most men are there to work on themselves, not to provide validation or entertainment. Bookstores, coffee shops, and other third spaces show similar patterns. Men who once lingered are more likely to complete their purpose and leave. The era of extended hanging out in hopes of organic connection has given way to purposeful activity followed by return to private peace. This change reduces opportunities for the kind of low pressure interactions that once built familiarity over time. The cumulative effect is a society where men and women occupy overlapping spaces but interact less in the romantic sense, parallel lives rather than intertwined ones. Each side manages its own challenges with reduced crossover support. For men who have embraced this, the result is often greater personal satisfaction. For women who expected continued male initiative, the result can be frustration, loneliness, and practical difficulty. None of this is cause for celebration of anyone's hardship. It is simply the working out of incentives in a complex social system. When the cost of participation rises and the benefits decline, participation declines. When messages of independence are taken seriously by both sides, independence increases. When trust erodes through repeated negative experiences, caution becomes the default. Men who have walked away have learned that being alone is not a failure. It is often the most rational choice available under current conditions. They have discovered that self acceptance brings a stability that external relationships rarely match unless those relationships are built on solid mutual ground. They have seen through the idea that a woman's presence alone constitutes being the table or bringing enough value. Real value in relationships comes from consistent actions, shared standards, and reciprocal effort over time. As economic pressures continue, some voices will grow louder in calling for men to return to previous patterns. Demands for dates, for financial help, for emotional labor will appear alongside complaints about male absence. Men who have internalized the lessons of the past decades will likely continue to prioritize their own stability. They have seen what happens when they ignore pattern recognition in favor of hopeful words. Observable reality has become their guide, and that reality shows a landscape where self preservation serves them better than self sacrifice. This does not mean the future is entirely bleak for connection. Human beings are adaptable. New norms can emerge when enough people recognize the failures of old ones. Women who demonstrate genuine respect for male boundaries, who bring their own stability to the table, and who value men beyond utility may still find willing partners among those men who remain open. Men who maintain their peace while staying approachable on their own terms may encounter women who have also learned from the shift. The key will be honesty on both sides, honest assessment of what each person actually brings rather than what they claim to bring, honest acknowledgement of past cultural contributions to the current dynamic rather than blame directed solely at one gender, honest willingness to adjust behaviors that have proven counterproductive. Without that honesty, the separation will likely continue and even deepen. For now, the men who have walked away are living according to their updated understanding of the world. They focus on what they can control. They build lives of quiet competence and personal satisfaction. They enjoy the freedom that comes with reduced drama and increased autonomy. They have made peace with the idea that not every problem requires their intervention and not every opportunity for connection is worth pursuing. This approach is not anti woman, it is pro self. It is the natural response of rational agents to a changed environment. Women who feel the effects of this response have the opportunity to reflect on their own role in creating the conditions that led to it. Reflection, not recrimination, offers the best path forward for anyone seeking better outcomes. The stories will continue to unfold. More accounts of women expressing surprise at male non participation. More examples of men choosing hobbies, fitness, career focus, and solitude over complicated romantic entanglements. More discussions about the long term societal impacts of these choices. Through it all, the men who have found their path will keep walking, not looking back with regret, but forward with clarity. They have learned that relationships with women are not inherently worth any price. They have seen female nature in its complexity, including the tendency to create chaos for attention or validation in some cases. They have chosen instead to focus on the things that bring lasting peace and happiness. In doing so, they have rediscovered aspects of themselves that were previously subordinated to external demands. Society may continue to pressure men to re engage on the old terms. Economic hardship may intensify calls for traditional roles. Cultural narratives may try to shame or guilt men back into pursuit. Yet the men who have internalized the lessons of recent decades are unlikely to forget what they have learned. Once a man experiences true peace after walking away, returning to a state of constant performance feels like voluntary imprisonment. The current moment is a reckoning with reality. Men walked away because they were told they were not needed, and then they were shown repeatedly that their needs were secondary. They listened, adapted, and found better ways to live. Women are now experiencing the downstream effects of that adaptation. Some will adjust and find that new paths to connection. Others will double down on old expectations and face continued frustration. Either way, the men who have chosen this path are not turning around. They have built lives that suit them. They protect their peace. They invest in themselves. They enjoy the simple luxury of days that belong to them without endless negotiation. This is the reality we are living through. It is neither good nor bad in absolute terms. It is the consequence of choices made over decades. Understanding it clearly, without romanticizing either side, is the first step toward navigating it wisely. Let us consider what this transformation means for the structure of daily life itself. When men redirect their focus inward and toward controllable outcomes, entire industries and social ecosystems begin to feel the ripple effects in subtle yet unmistakable ways. Workplaces that once relied on a certain level of male ambition tied to family provision now encounter individuals who pursue excellence for its own sake rather than as a means to external approval. Promotions and raises become tools for personal security rather than displays of status designed to attract partners. Meetings that used to carry undertones of competitive posturing give way to straightforward collaboration among those who have nothing left to prove in the realm of romantic validation. Productivity does not decline in these environments. On the contrary, it often sharpens because energy previously spent navigating unspoken expectations finds its way into tangible results and innovative problem solving. Men who have stepped back from the old pursuit dynamic bring a clarity of purpose that benefits their employers and themselves alike, creating environments where merit stands on its own without the distraction of performative roles. Think about the young professional who once poured countless hours into networking events and after work gatherings in hopes of meeting someone compatible. He now channels that same discipline into mastering a technical skill or building a side project that aligns with his long term vision. The evenings, once reserved for uncertain social maneuvers, transform into focused study sessions or restorative downtime that leaves him energized for the next day. Colleagues notice the difference not as withdrawal, but as a steadier presence, someone who delivers consistently without the emotional fluctuations that can accompany the ups and downs of dating life. Over time, these individual shifts accumulate into broader workplace cultures where competence and reliability take center stage. Companies that adapt to this reality by emphasizing clear expectations and fair rewards retain talent more effectively than those clinging to outdated assumptions about what motivates men. The narrative that men must chase external validation to remain driven loses its power when observable outcomes show otherwise. This internal redirection extends far beyond the office. In personal finances, it says men who have embraced this path often adopt strategies that prioritize long-term independence over short-term displays. They build emergency funds not out of fear, but out of quiet confidence that self reliance is the ultimate form of security. Investments focus on assets that generate freedom rather than those meant to signal success to others. Debt becomes something to eliminate swiftly so that no external pressure can dictate their choices. The result is a financial buffer that allows them to weather economic storms without panic or compromise. When inflation rises and costs increase across the board, these men feel the pressure less acutely because their lifestyles have been streamlined to match their actual needs rather than inflated expectations. They shop efficiently, cook meals that nourish without extravagance, and maintain living spaces that serve function and comfort rather than impressing visitors who may never arrive. This approach does not stem from scarcity mindset. It arises from a deep understanding that true wealth includes time, peace, and the ability to say no without consequence. Stories emerge from everyday men who describe this evolution in their own words during candid conversations. One individual shared how he spent his early 20s chasing the ideal relationship only to face repeated cycles of high effort followed by shifting standards. After several experiences where financial contributions were expected immediately, while emotional reciprocity remained vague, he decided to pause and reassess. What followed was a period of deliberate solitude during which he learned to enjoy his own company fully. He took up woodworking in a small home workshop, finding satisfaction in creating furniture that improved his living space. Weekends, once spent on dates, transformed into projects that left him with something lasting and useful. His stress levels dropped noticeably as he no longer monitored his phone for responses or analyzed conversations for hidden meanings. When asked if he missed the pursuit, he replied that he missed the version of connection he had imagined, but not the reality he had encountered. His life had become richer in ways that no external relationship had ever delivered. Another account comes from a man in his mid 30s who had built a stable career only to watch friends navigate separations that drained their savings and altered their daily realities. He chose a different route by focusing on physical conditioning and community involvement through local volunteer efforts that aligned with his values. The gym became a sanctuary of personal challenge rather than a social venue. He formed friendships with other men who shared similar outlooks, creating a network of mutual support based on respect and shared activities rather than competition for attention. Their conversations centered on practical matters, career strategies, skill development, and honest reflections on life choices. No one in this circle felt the need to perform or exaggerate to maintain status. The bond came from authenticity, and it provided a sense of belonging that many traditional relationships had failed to deliver. These men supported one another through challenges without the drama that often accompanies mixed gender dynamics, proving that connection remains possible and fulfilling when it is not burdened by mismatched expectations. Women observing these changes from the outside sometimes express a mixture of confusion and adaptation attempts. Social media platforms fill with reflections on the new landscape, where some acknowledge the shift in male behavior, while others question why the previous patterns no longer hold. Clips circulate of women describing their experiences in dating environments that feel markedly different from what they anticipated based on earlier cultural stories. One woman recounted attending social events where men engaged politely but made no effort to escalate interactions into romantic interest. She noted the absence of the eager pursuit she had come to expect, and it prompted her to examine her own assumptions about what she brought to potential connections. Rather than demanding a return to old dynamics, she began focusing on self development in areas that enhanced her independence, recognizing that sustainable partnerships require both sides to operate from strength rather than need. These public discussions reveal important patterns in how expectations evolve. Some voices highlight the practical difficulties of managing households and careers without the traditional support structures, leading to honest admissions that certain aspects of independence carry heavier loads than anticipated. Others explore creative ways to foster interactions in modern contexts, such as interest based groups or community activities where compatibility can develop organically without pressure. The key insight emerging from many of these reflections is that forcing outcomes rarely succeeds. When men have already found fulfillment in their current paths, any attempt to pull them back through guilt or demands tends to reinforce their boundaries rather than weaken them. Respect for that reality becomes the foundation for any future dialogue that seeks genuine reconnection. Consider the psychological landscape for men who have made this transition. Solitude, once feared as a sign of failure, reveals itself as a space for profound self discovery. Without the constant input of external opinions, thoughts clarify and priorities align more naturally. Men report improved sleep patterns, clearer decision making, and a heightened sense of agency over their daily rhythms. Hobbies that were once sidelined due to relationship demands now receive the attention they deserve, leading to mastery and satisfaction that compounds over time. Reading, for instance, becomes a deep dive into subjects that expand worldview rather than a casual distraction. Physical training shifts from appearance focused to performance oriented, building resilience that serves every area of life. The mind that once raced with analysis of social cues settles into a state of calm observation, allowing creativity and problem solving to flourish without interference. This mental clarity carries over into how men approach larger life decisions. Career moves are evaluated based on personal fulfillment and security rather than potential to impress or provide for others. Travel plans emerge from genuine curiosity about the world instead of romantic gestures. Even simple choices like weekend routines reflect a commitment to restoration rather than obligation. One man described how his Saturdays now involve a long hike, followed by quiet reflection and meal preparation, activities that recharge him completely and leave no room for regret over missed opportunities. He contrasted this with earlier periods when weekends felt like performances designed to keep a connection alive, often leaving him drained and uncertain. The difference, he explained, was not in the activities themselves, but in the motivation behind them. When actions stem from internal alignment rather than external pressure, they generate energy instead of consuming it. Broader societal patterns begin to reflect these individual transformations as well. Marriage rates among younger cohorts continue to show declines, not because of disinterest in connection, but because the terms of engagement have become clearer and more selective. Birth rates adjust accordingly as men and women alike weigh the responsibilities of family against their current realities. Communities see shifts in how social events are organized, with more emphasis on mixed activities that allow natural compatibility to surface without forced romantic framing. Educational institutions notice changes in male student engagement, where focus on personal development pathways strengthens even as traditional dating narratives on campus lose influence. These are not collapses, but evolutions driven by the same forces that have always shaped human behavior: incentives, experiences, and the pursuit of what actually works in practice. Looking ahead, the coming years will likely test these patterns further as economic conditions fluctuate and cultural conversations mature. Men who have built lives of self sufficiency will find themselves better positioned to navigate uncertainty, having already practiced the discipline of living within their means and according to their values. Women who embrace similar self reliance may discover new avenues for fulfillment that do not depend on rekindling old dynamics. The interplay between these paths could lead to healthier interactions when both sides approach one another from positions of strength rather than scarcity. Yet the foundation remains the same. Observable actions and consistent behaviors will determine outcomes more than words or wishes ever could. Rhetorically, one might ask what true partnership looks like in this new environment. It cannot resemble the one sided arrangements that contributed to the current separation. Instead, it would require mutual recognition of each person's autonomy and contributions without assuming default roles based on gender alone. Men who have walked this path bring valuable lessons about boundaries and self worth to any future relationship. Women who have reflected on the shift bring their own insights into what genuine independence entails. Together, these experiences could forge connections that are more resilient because they are chosen freely rather than compelled by social pressure or economic necessity. In the meantime, the men who have found their equilibrium continue to thrive in quiet ways that often go unnoticed by broader narratives. They maintain their spaces with care, pursue knowledge with curiosity, and engage with the world on terms that honor their peace. They form alliances with like minded individuals who understand the value of straightforward communication and shared respect. They invest in their health not as a temporary measure, but as a lifelong commitment to capability. They enjoy entertainment that challenges the mind or body in rewarding ways, avoiding the traps of passive consumption that once filled voids left by unfulfilling interactions. This lifestyle is not flashy, but it is sustainable and deeply satisfying because it aligns with who they have become through experience. The stories of transformation multiply as more men share their journeys through private conversations and anonymous forums. One recounts leaving a high pressure corporate track to start a small consulting practice that allows him to work remotely and on his own schedule. The freedom from commuting and office politics gave him time to develop a fitness routine that transformed his energy levels. Another describes how he used his savings to purchase a modest property where he could cultivate a garden and workshop, activities that connect him to tangible creation and seasonal rhythms. These are not escapes from responsibility, but redefinitions of it, where accountability turns inward toward personal standards rather than outward toward unpredictable expectations. Women encountering these realities sometimes respond with efforts to understand rather than reverse the trend. They explore their own hobbies and skill building, recognizing that self contained fulfillment has its own appeal. Some join interest groups where men and women interact around shared passions, allowing connections to form without the pressure of dating scripts. Others focus on career advancement or creative pursuits that provide the same sense of purpose men have discovered in their solitude. The adaptation process varies, but the common thread is a growing acceptance that the old playbook no longer applies universally and that new approaches must account for the lessons both sides have learned. This does not mean all interactions cease or that society fragments completely. Human connection remains a fundamental drive, but its expression evolves to match current conditions. Men who remain open to relationships do so with heightened discernment, seeking evidence of compatibility through actions over time rather than initial impressions. They value consistency, emotional steadiness, and mutual respect as non negotiable foundations. Women who demonstrate these qualities find receptive audiences among those men who have not closed the door entirely, but have simply raised their standards based on past observations. The process is slower and more deliberate, yet it carries the potential for depth that rush dynamics often lacked. As economic pressures persist, the advantages of this self reliant approach become even more apparent. Men who avoided lifestyle inflation during prosperous times now maintain stability when costs rise. They adjust spending without panic because their baseline is already lean and intentional. This resilience extends to mental health, where the absence of relational volatility provides a buffer against external stressors. They face challenges with the same focused problem solving that serves them in hobbies and careers, turning obstacles into opportunities for growth rather than sources of despair. The peace they cultivated in quieter times becomes a resource that sustains them through turbulence, proving that the decision to step back was not temporary, but a foundational shift toward greater control over their well being. Future generations will inherit this evolving landscape, observing the patterns set by those who came before. Young men entering adulthood today have access to more information about relationship dynamics than any previous cohort, allowing them to make choices informed by collective experience rather than isolated optimism. They see the value in building personal foundations first, developing skills and stability that serve them regardless of partnership status. This early emphasis on self mastery may lead to even stronger outcomes in the long run as they enter potential relationship webs with clearer boundaries and realistic expectations. The cycle of learning continues, each generation refining its understanding based on what has proven effective in practice. Women in these younger groups likewise absorb the realities of the current environment, often choosing paths that emphasize education, career development, and personal networks that provide support without dependency. They witness the benefits of independence firsthand and incorporate those lessons into their own planning. Some express interest in partnerships that honor both autonomy and collaboration, seeking men who match their level of self sufficiency rather than filling traditional voids. These dynamics suggest a potential for more balanced interactions in the future, where neither side enters with disproportionate leverage or unrealistic assumptions. Throughout all of this, the core principle remains: one of observable reality guiding decisions. Men who have walked away trust the patterns they have witnessed over promises that have not held up under scrutiny. They have seen the difference between words and consistent behavior, between temporary enthusiasm and sustained effort. This discernment serves them well in every area of life, from finances to friendships to personal goals. It frees them from the exhaustion of second guessing and allows them to move forward with confidence in their own judgment. The rhetorical question that lingers is whether society as a whole will learn from these developments or continue to frame them as problems to be fixed through pressure rather than understanding. The evidence suggests that organic adaptation yields better results than forced compliance. When individuals align their actions with their actual experiences and incentives, the outcomes tend to stabilize in healthier configurations. Men have demonstrated this by creating lives of purpose and peace on their own terms. The next phase depends on how others respond to that demonstration with honesty and adaptability of their own. In reflecting on these shifts, it becomes clear that the path of self preservation is not a rejection of connection, but a prerequisite for healthier forms of it. By first securing their own foundation, men position themselves to engage from strength if and when the right opportunities arise. Until then, they continue living fully in the present, deriving satisfaction from the daily practice of competence and calm. This approach has proven its worth through countless individual stories, each adding to the collective understanding that peace is achievable when one stops outsourcing happiness to uncertain external sources. The coming decades will reveal more about how these patterns solidify and influence larger structures, from economies to communities to cultural norms. What remains certain is that men who have embraced this journey will not abandon the lessons that brought them here. They have tasted the freedom of self directed living and found it superior to the alternatives they once pursued. Their example stands as a quiet testament to the power of aligned action, inviting others to consider their own paths with similar clarity and resolve. Let us examine how this quiet realignment influences the broader fabric of communities and institutions over extended periods. As men prioritize self directed living, the ripple effects appear in unexpected places, from local organizations to national conversations about family structures and economic participation. Neighborhoods notice subtle changes in how public spaces are used, where parks and community centers see more men engaged in solo or small group activities that emphasize skill building or quiet reflection rather than social mingling aimed at romantic prospects. Volunteer roles in civic groups attract individuals who contribute steadily without seeking recognition or status, signaling because their sense of purpose comes from internal alignment rather than external applause. These contributions strengthen community resilience in practical ways as men apply the same discipline they use in personal projects to collective efforts like neighborhood maintenance or mentorship programs for younger generations. The result is a network of support that functions through shared competence and mutual respect rather than through the lens of traditional gender expectations that once dominated such spaces. Consider the evolution within male friendships during this era. Bonds deepen when they are forged around common goals and honest exchange rather than competition for attention or validation from outside circles. Men gather for activities that challenge them physically or intellectually, forming groups centered on hiking expeditions, collaborative building projects, or strategic game sessions that foster camaraderie without the underlying pressure of performative roles. These friendships provide a stable foundation of encouragement during life transitions because they are rooted in observable reliability rather than fleeting emotional highs. One man described how his weekly discussion circle with peers evolved from casual meetups to a source of profound insight where each participant shares lessons from career pivots or personal challenges without judgment or one upmanship. The group has become a sounding board for long term planning where ideas about financial independence or skill acquisition are refined collectively. Such networks demonstrate that human connection thrives when it is not overshadowed by the complexities of mismatched romantic dynamics, and they offer a model for the sustainable relationships that many find more fulfilling than previous experiences. This emphasis on male camaraderie extends to professional and creative collaborations as well. Entrepreneurs who have stepped back from old patterns often partner with like minded individuals to launch ventures that reflect their values of simplicity and self sufficiency. Small businesses focused on practical services or niche products emerge from these alliances, bringing innovation that serves real needs without the overhead of inflated lifestyles. These enterprises frequently operate with lean structures where decisions prioritize sustainability and personal freedom over rapid scaling for external prestige. The owners report higher satisfaction levels because their work aligns directly with the peace they have cultivated, allowing them to maintain boundaries that protect their well being. In turn, these businesses contribute to local economies in meaningful ways, creating jobs that emphasize skill development and fair compensation rather than exploitative demands. The pattern underscores a larger truth that when men redirect energy toward productive outlets, the benefits compound beyond the individual level, influencing economic vitality in understated but enduring forms. Turning attention to the generational dimension reveals how younger cohorts are internalizing these lessons at an accelerated pace. Boys growing up in households where fathers or mentors model self reliance absorb the value of personal mastery early on. They witness through daily example that competence in practical matters builds confidence that no external approval can replicate. Schools and extracurricular programs see shifts as these young men gravitate toward disciplines that reward individual effort, such as engineering trades or creative problem solving fields. Mentorship initiatives pairing experienced men with emerging adults focus on transmitting skills for independent living, including financial literacy, physical conditioning, and emotional regulation. The transmission of knowledge happens organically as older generations share stories of their own transitions, emphasizing the importance of pattern recognition and boundary setting. This creates a feedback loop where each successive group enters adulthood better equipped to navigate social landscapes that have been reshaped by the choices of those who came before. The outcome is not isolation, but a more grounded approach to life where relationships of all kinds are entered with clearer eyes and stronger foundations. Women navigating this changed terrain exhibit a range of responses that reflect the complexity of human adaptation. Some channel the shift into intensified focus on personal development, pursuing advanced education or entrepreneurial paths that enhance their autonomy and open new avenues for fulfillment. Others explore community based networks that provide emotional and practical support without relying on traditional partnership models. Public forums and discussion spaces feature accounts of women who have reassessed their priorities, recognizing the strength that comes from building resilience independently. These adaptations often lead to innovative approaches to daily challenges such as shared housing arrangements or skill sharing collectives that distribute responsibilities more evenly among participants. The process involves honest self examination where past assumptions about entitlement or expectation are weighed against current realities, leading to more deliberate choices about how to allocate time and energy. While frustration surfaces in some reflections, the prevailing theme among those who adapt successfully is one of empowerment through acceptance of the new dynamics rather than resistance to them. In parallel, certain segments of media and cultural commentary attempt to frame the male withdrawal as a temporary phase that requires intervention or correction. Articles and segments appear questioning the sustainability of self focused living while proposing solutions that often circle back to encouraging renewed participation on familiar terms. These efforts frequently overlook the underlying incentives that drove the change in the first place, emphasizing instead surface level observations about demographic trends or social statistics. The pushback meets limited success because men who have experienced the benefits of their current path recognize the disconnect between the proposed remedies and the observable evidence from their own lives. When narratives suggest that re engaging without addressing past imbalances will restore balance, the response is measured, skepticism grounded in pattern recognition honed over years. Cultural institutions that once shaped expectations find themselves adjusting as audiences respond more favorably to content that acknowledges the validity of individual choices rather than prescribing uniform solutions. Philosophically, this movement invites deeper consideration of what constitutes a meaningful life in modern times. Self reliance emerges not as a defensive posture, but as an affirmative pursuit of authenticity, where individuals define success according to internal metrics rather than societal scripts. Men who embrace this path often describe a sense of liberation that comes from releasing the burden of perpetual performance. They explore questions of purpose through direct experience, testing ideas in real world applications rather than abstract debate. This inquiry leads to refined understandings of happiness as something cultivated through consistent action rather than acquired through external acquisition. The philosophical foundation supports long term visioning, where decisions about career health and relationships are evaluated against criteria of sustainability and personal integrity. Over time, this approach fosters a maturity that influences every interaction, making men more discerning partners or colleagues when they choose to engage while remaining content in their independence. Health dimensions provide another layer of insight into the advantages of this lifestyle. Physical well being improves as routines emphasize consistent training, nutrition, and recovery without the disruptions of relational stress. Many men report enhanced vitality and mental sharpness after reducing exposure to environments that previously demanded constant emotional navigation. Sleep quality rises when evenings are dedicated to restorative activities rather than analysis of social exchanges. Cardiovascular health benefits from sustained activity levels that serve personal goals rather than performative displays. Mental health gains traction through the development of coping mechanisms rooted in self accountability, where challenges are met with problem solving rather than blame shifting. These improvements compound, creating a virtuous cycle where greater capability reinforces the commitment to self preservation. Medical professionals observing broader trends note that individuals who manage their lives with this level of intentionality often present with fewer stress related conditions, highlighting the tangible benefits of aligned living. Long term demographic patterns offer a window into potential societal trajectories. As participation in traditional family formation adjusts birth rates and household compositions evolve, reflecting the choices of informed adults. Communities may see growth in non traditional living arrangements where individuals maintain independence while contributing to shared support systems. Educational and career pathways diversify as men pursue fields that align with their strengths and interests without the overlay of provider expectations. Economic models adapt to populations with higher rates of single person households, influencing housing markets, consumer behaviors, and savings patterns. These shifts are not uniform, but they indicate a society recalibrating toward greater individual agency, where collective outcomes emerge from aggregated personal decisions rather than top down mandates. The resilience of such a system lies in its ability to accommodate varied paths while preserving core functions through voluntary cooperation. Future scenarios emerge from these foundations, where technology and social norms continue to intersect with human behavior. Advances in remote work and digital connectivity may further enable self sufficient lifestyles, allowing men to locate in areas that suit their preferences without compromising professional viability. Virtual communities could expand the reach of male networks, providing mentorship and collaboration across distances while maintaining the authenticity of in person bonds. Women adapting to parallel opportunities might leverage similar tools to build fulfilling lives that intersect with male paths in organic and low pressure ways. The interplay could foster environments where connection arises from mutual strength rather than necessity, leading to partnerships that are chosen deliberately and sustained through respect. Challenges will undoubtedly arise as economic or cultural pressures test these adaptations. Yet the core principle of trusting observable reality equips individuals to respond effectively. Cultural pushback occasionally manifests in calls for policy adjustments or social campaigns aimed at reversing trends. Proposals range from educational reforms to incentive programs designed to encourage earlier family formation. Yet these initiatives encounter resistance when they fail to account for the experiential knowledge that informs current behaviors. Men who have built lives of quiet competence view such efforts through the lens of past outcomes, recognizing that external pressure rarely alters deeply internalized lessons. Instead, the most effective influences come from within as individuals witness the successes of those around them and draw their own conclusions. This organic diffusion of ideas proves more powerful than coordinated campaigns because it aligns with personal agency rather than opposing it. Exploring the role of skill acquisition reveals how men channel redirected energy into mastery that enhances every aspect of existence. Whether through learning a musical instrument, advancing in a technical trade, or studying historical philosophies, the pursuit of excellence becomes an end in itself. These skills not only provide practical utility, but also cultivate discipline and patience qualities that serve well in all endeavors. A man who dedicates time to perfecting a craft experiences the satisfaction of incremental progress that mirrors the broader journey of self improvement. Such activities create opportunities for flow states where time recedes and focus sharpens, leaving a lasting sense of accomplishment. Over years, these pursuits accumulate into a rich tapestry of capabilities that bolster confidence and open doors to new experiences without dependence on others for validation. Male friendships evolve further as shared skill building activities become central to group interactions. Teams form around collaborative projects such as restoring vintage equipment or organizing adventure challenges where each member contributes expertise and learns from the others. These experiences strengthen trust through demonstrated reliability rather than verbal assurances. Conversations during these activities delve into meaningful topics ranging from life strategies to reflections on societal changes, fostering intellectual growth alongside physical or creative ones. The bonds that result are resilient because they are tested in real scenarios where actions speak louder than intentions. This model of friendship offers a template for deeper human connection that many find more rewarding than superficial social norms of previous eras. Women who have adapted successfully often share insights that highlight parallel journeys of growth. They describe periods of reflection leading to redefined priorities where career fulfillment, community involvement, or creative expression take precedence. Some establish professional networks that provide both opportunity and support, mirroring the structures men have developed. Others invest in personal wellness practices that enhance their capacity to manage responsibilities with grace and efficiency. These women report a sense of liberation when they release the expectation of constant external provision, recognizing their own potential to shape fulfilling lives. Their stories contribute to a broader dialogue about mutual adaptation, where both genders acknowledge the value of independence as a foundation for any future interdependence. As societal conversations mature, the emphasis shifts toward practical solutions that respect individual autonomy. Discussions in various forums explore ways to create environments where natural interactions can occur without the weight of outdated scripts. Interest based gatherings, community workshops, and skill sharing events gain popularity as venues for organic connection. Participants approach these spaces with clearer intentions, focusing on shared values and complementary strengths rather than predefined roles. The result is interactions that feel authentic because they emerge from genuine compatibility rather than societal pressure. This evolution suggests that while the old pathways have diminished, new ones are forming based on the realities of the present moment. Demographic data, when examined without bias, reveals trends that align with these personal choices. Delayed partnerships, smaller household sizes, and increased focus on personal development appear consistently across regions where economic and cultural factors intersect. These patterns do not indicate decline, but transformation as populations adjust to new incentives and understandings. Educational attainment rises among those who prioritize self investment, and career trajectories reflect a preference for stability over rapid advancement tied to family obligations. The long view shows a society that is becoming more adaptable as individuals exercise greater control over their trajectories. Philosophical underpinnings deepen with time as men reflect on the nature of freedom and responsibility. Self reliance is recognized as an active practice that requires ongoing commitment rather than a passive state. It involves continuous evaluation of priorities and adjustment of habits to maintain alignment with core values. This practice extends to ethical considerations where decisions are weighed against principles of integrity and mutual respect. Men who embody this approach often become quiet leaders in their spheres, influencing others through example rather than exhortation. Their presence demonstrates that strength lies in composure, and that true power emerges from within rather than from external conquest. Health benefits continue to manifest in measurable ways as sustained self care becomes habitual. Regular physical activity combined with mindful nutrition supports not only bodily function, but also cognitive performance, leading to sharper decision making and creative output. Mental clarity improves as sources of unnecessary stress are minimized, allowing for deeper concentration on meaningful pursuits. Emotional regulation strengthens through practiced detachment from outcomes beyond one's control, fostering resilience in the face of external pressures. These gains reinforce the lifestyle, creating a positive feedback mechanism where well being fuels further dedication to personal mastery. Looking toward potential futures, one envisions societies where the balance between independence and connection is achieved through deliberate choice rather than default expectation. Men and women who have navigated the current shifts may enter relationships with heightened awareness of what sustains them over time. Partnerships built on this foundation emphasize reciprocity and respect for individual paths, leading to greater stability. Communities benefit from the contributions of self possessed individuals who bring clarity and capability to collective endeavors. Economic systems adapt to support diverse living arrangements while preserving opportunities for voluntary collaboration. Cultural narratives evolve to reflect these realities, incorporating stories of personal triumph through self determination rather than romantic resolution alone. Media representations begin to portray characters who find fulfillment in varied ways, acknowledging the validity of solitary paths alongside partnered ones. This diversification enriches the cultural landscape, offering models that resonate with lived experiences. The dialogue becomes more nuanced as participants recognize the complexity of human motivations and the importance of aligning actions with evidence rather than ideology. In all these developments, the central thread remains the power of observable reality to guide individual and collective choices. Men who have walked their chosen path continue to demonstrate through daily living that peace and purpose are attainable when one honors personal boundaries and invests in self mastery. Their example inspires reflection among those who observe it, prompting questions about one's own alignment with truth and capability. As the years unfold, the accumulated wisdom from these experiences shapes a world where autonomy is valued as the bedrock of meaningful engagement. The men who have embraced this journey remain steadfast in their resolve. They have constructed lives that honor their discoveries, and they continue to refine their approaches with each passing season. Their contributions, whether through professional excellence, community involvement, or personal example, enrich the world in ways that extend far beyond the immediate. By living authentically, they invite others to consider similar paths of clarity and strength, fostering a society that values substance over spectacle and integrity over convenience. This ongoing evolution underscores the resilience of the human spirit when freed from conflicting demands. It highlights the capacity for growth that emerges when individuals trust their own judgment and act accordingly. The future holds promise for those who approach it with open eyes and steady hands, ready to build upon the foundations they have established through deliberate choice and sustained effort. Let us now turn our focus toward the ways technology and digital environments have accelerated and amplified the patterns we observe in personal choices and collective behaviors. Digital platforms that once served as primary venues for social connection have evolved into spaces where men exercise unprecedented selectivity. Dating applications, for instance, reveal clear data trends showing reduced engagement from male users who have developed sophisticated filters based on accumulated experience rather than superficial criteria. Profiles receive minimal interaction unless they demonstrate clear evidence of reciprocity and stability through consistent messaging and shared values. This selectivity stems not from disinterest in companionship, but from a refined understanding of time as a non renewable resource that deserves protection. Men allocate their digital presence toward platforms that offer intellectual stimulation or skill enhancement, such as specialized forums for hobbyists or professional development networks. The result is a more intentional online footprint where interactions build genuine value rather than perpetuate cycles of superficial validation. These platforms themselves adapt by introducing features that reward authenticity and mutual effort while diminishing the effectiveness of algorithmic games that previously favored high volume, low commitment engagement. Within these digital landscapes, stories of transformation circulate among men who describe how they once participated actively only to recognize the imbalance in effort and outcome. One individual recounted curating an online presence that emphasized his career achievements and hobbies, yet consistently encountered profiles where expectations of immediate financial or emotional investment overshadowed any discussion of shared contributions. After repeated cycles where conversations stalled despite clear compatibility signals, he shifted his energy to online communities dedicated to practical skills like home automation or financial modeling. There, he found collaborators who exchanged knowledge freely and formed virtual alliances that translated into real world projects. The friendships that developed provided intellectual depth and practical support without the hidden cost that had characterized earlier digital dating experiences. His daily routine now includes structured time for these enriching exchanges, leaving him more fulfilled and less inclined to revisit spaces that demand performance without equivalent return. Such accounts illustrate how technology, when approached with discernment, becomes a tool for amplification of personal peace rather than a source of distraction or depletion. The broader impact on media consumption patterns further highlights this redirection. Men who have embraced self directed living often curate their information intake towards sources that align with observable evidence and long term utility. Podcasts focused on personal finance, historical analysis, or scientific inquiry gain prominence because they equip listeners with frameworks for independent decision making. Entertainment choices lean toward narratives that celebrate competence, resilience, and quiet triumph rather than those centered on relational conflict as the primary driver of plot. Streaming services see shifts in viewing habits where documentaries on self-reliance or technical innovation capture sustained attention. This selective consumption reinforces the internal clarity men have cultivated, allowing them to filter out cultural messages that contradict their lived realities. The process creates a self reinforcing loop where informed perspectives strengthen resolve, and reduced exposure to contradictory narratives preserves mental energy for productive pursuits. Economic structures respond to these behavioral changes in measurable ways that extend beyond individual households. Markets for durable goods and self improvement tools experience steady growth as men invest in equipment that supports independent living, such as quality workshop tools, advanced fitness gear, or educational subscriptions. Industries related to personal development, from online courses to specialized equipment, see increased participation from demographics that prioritize capability over consumption. Real estate patterns adjust with a rise in demand for compact, efficient living spaces that facilitate minimalist lifestyles without sacrificing comfort or functionality. These shifts influence urban planning and development projects that increasingly incorporate features designed for self sufficient residents, including community workshops or shared resource hubs. Businesses that recognize the trend adapt their offerings to emphasize longevity, reliability, and user empowerment rather than trends tied to social signaling. The cumulative effect strengthens economic sectors that support autonomy while encouraging innovation in areas that align with the values of those who have chosen this path. Psychological frameworks provide additional context for understanding the depth of this adaptation. Concepts of intrinsic motivation gain relevance as men discover that internal drivers such as mastery, purpose, and autonomy yield more consistent satisfaction than external rewards tied to relational approval. Research in behavioral psychology underscores how repeated exposure to mismatched incentives leads to strategic withdrawal as a protective mechanism that preserves well being. Men who have navigated this process report enhanced emotional regulation through practices that emphasize present moment awareness and acceptance of what lies within their control. Mindfulness techniques integrated into daily routines support the maintenance of peace by interrupting patterns of rumination that once accompanied uncertain social dynamics. These psychological tools, when combined with practical action, create a robust internal architecture that withstands external pressures and enables clearer navigation of life's complexities. The outcome is not emotional detachment, but a more balanced engagement with the world where responses arise from deliberate choice rather than reactive habit. Intergenerational transmission of these insights occurs through subtle yet powerful channels. Fathers and mentors who model self reliance demonstrate to younger males the practical benefits of boundary setting and resource management. Conversations during shared activities convey lessons about evaluating relationships through the lens of mutual value rather than societal expectation. Young men entering their formative years benefit from this modeling as they develop frameworks for decision making that prioritize long term outcomes over immediate gratification. Educational environments that incorporate elements of personal responsibility and skill acquisition further reinforce these principles, allowing students to experiment with independence in controlled settings. The result is a generation equipped with both knowledge and temperament suited to the realities they will inherit. This preparation fosters resilience and adaptability, ensuring that future choices reflect informed agency rather than inherited assumptions. Women who engage thoughtfully with these developments often contribute valuable perspectives to ongoing dialogues. Through reflective writing or public discussions, they explore the nuances of personal growth in a landscape where traditional pathways have diversified. Some describe how they have cultivated professional networks that provide both opportunity and camaraderie, mirroring the supportive structures men have built. Others focus on wellness practices that enhance their capacity for independent problem solving and emotional steadiness. These efforts lead to innovative community models, such as collaborative living arrangements or interest based collectives that distribute support more evenly. The process of adaptation involves acknowledging the validity of differing life strategies while pursuing paths that align with individual strengths and circumstances. Contributions from these women enrich the collective understanding by highlighting parallel journeys of self discovery that complement rather than contradict the male experience. Institutional responses vary as organizations grapple with the implications of shifting participation rates. Workplaces implement policies that recognize the value of focused individual contribution by offering flexible arrangements that support personal boundaries and work life integration. Educational institutions expand curricula to include practical life skills that prepare students for self directed futures, including financial management, conflict resolution, and ethical decision making. Community organizations evolve their programming to accommodate diverse participation styles, creating inclusive spaces where solitary reflection and group collaboration coexist harmoniously. These adjustments reflect a maturing societal awareness that values diverse expressions of engagement rather than enforcing uniform expectations. The institutions that thrive are those that align their structures with the realities of individual agency, allowing participants to contribute meaningfully on terms that respect their autonomy. Philosophical inquiry deepens as individuals contemplate the nature of fulfillment in an era of expanded choice. Questions arise about the balance between solitude and connection, exploring how each serves distinct aspects of human flourishing. Men who have walked their chosen paths often articulate a vision of life where peace emerges from alignment between actions and core principles rather than from external validation. This perspective encourages ongoing reflection on what constitutes authentic living in contemporary contexts. Ethical considerations come to the forefront as decisions are evaluated against standards of integrity and reciprocity, ensuring that personal choices do not inadvertently undermine broader social harmony. The philosophical foundation supports a mature approach to existence where freedom is exercised responsibly and relationships, when pursued, are entered with full awareness of their potential and limitations. Health outcomes associated with this lifestyle continue to demonstrate measurable advantages. Sustained physical activity tailored to personal goals enhances cardiovascular function and metabolic efficiency, contributing to longevity and vitality. Nutritional choices that prioritize whole foods and balanced intake support cognitive sharpness and emotional stability. Recovery practices, including adequate rest and stress management techniques, bolster resilience against daily challenges. Mental health benefits manifest through reduced incidence of anxiety related to social performance, allowing for clearer focus on meaningful objectives. These health gains create a foundation upon which other aspects of life can flourish, reinforcing the decision to prioritize self care as a strategic investment rather than a luxury. Individuals who maintain these practices often serve as examples within their circles, inspiring others to explore similar approaches to well being. Demographic trends, when viewed through a long term lens, suggest ongoing evolution rather than abrupt disruption. Household formations adapt to reflect preferences for independence with increases in single person or small shared arrangements that facilitate personal control. Workforce participation patterns shift as men pursue careers that align with intrinsic motivations, leading to higher job satisfaction and retention in fields that reward competence. Educational attainment reflects a commitment to lifelong learning as individuals seek knowledge that enhances their autonomy across domains. These trends influence policy discussions around housing, social services, and economic planning, encouraging frameworks that support diverse living choices. The adaptability of populations in response to changing incentives demonstrates the flexibility inherent in human societies when individuals are free to respond according to their circumstances. Technological advancements promise to further enable self sufficient lifestyles by providing tools that reduce dependency on traditional structures. Innovations in home automation, energy management, and remote collaboration lower barriers to independent living while maintaining connectivity to broader networks. Virtual reality environments may offer new avenues for skill development and social interaction that respect personal boundaries and preferences. Artificial intelligence applications could assist with personalized learning and resource optimization, streamlining daily tasks and freeing time for higher pursuits. As these technologies mature, they will likely amplify the advantages of the current path, allowing men to achieve even greater levels of mastery and peace. The integration of such tools requires discernment to ensure they serve human values rather than dictating them. But when approached thoughtfully, they become powerful allies in the pursuit of aligned living. Cultural narratives gradually incorporate these realities, reflecting a more nuanced portrayal of contemporary life. Creative works explore themes of self discovery and quiet strength, portraying characters who find purpose through internal alignment and deliberate action. Media representations diversify to include stories of full stories of fulfillment achieved through varied paths, acknowledging the legitimacy of both solitary and partnered journeys. Public discourse evolves toward greater emphasis on personal responsibility and mutual respect as foundational elements of healthy interactions. This cultural maturation enriches the shared imagination by offering models that resonate with lived experiences and encourage thoughtful engagement with the world. The stories that emerge celebrate resilience, adaptability, and the quiet triumphs of those who navigate complexity with integrity. In considering potential futures, one can envision societies where the lessons of this era contribute to more balanced and sustainable social architectures. Partnerships formed in this context emphasize equality of effort and clarity of intention, leading to relationships that endure through mutual appreciation rather than obligation. Communities benefit from the presence of individuals who bring clarity, capability, and composure to collective endeavors, enhancing overall resilience. Economic systems evolve to accommodate a wider range of participation styles, supporting innovation in sectors that align with values of autonomy and long term thinking. The interplay between independence and connection achieves a dynamic equilibrium where each enhances the other without diminishing its counterpart. Challenges will persist, as with any period of transition, yet the foundational principles of observable reality and personal agency equip individuals to address them effectively. The men who have undertaken this journey continue to refine their approaches, drawing strength from the consistency of their choices. They maintain focus on what lies within their influence, cultivating habits that support sustained peace and purposeful action. Their contributions, whether through professional dedication, community involvement, or personal example, serve as quiet beacons for those seeking similar clarity. By living in accordance with their discoveries, they demonstrate the viability of a path grounded in self mastery and informed discernment. This living example invites reflection among observers, prompting consideration of how similar principles might apply to their own circumstances. The evolution underscores the enduring capacity of individuals to adapt and thrive when guided by evidence and inner conviction. It highlights the importance of aligning daily practices with deeply held values, creating lives that are both sustainable and satisfying. As the narrative unfolds, the accumulated experiences of those who have walked away shape a world where autonomy is honored as the cornerstone of meaningful existence. The path forward remains open to those who approach it with honesty, courage, and a commitment to truth as revealed through observable outcomes. As these developments unfold across digital and personal spheres, the deeper institutional layers of society begin to register the effects in ways that reshape foundational structures without fanfare or dramatic upheaval. Legal frameworks that once operated under assumptions of default male participation in certain roles now confront a landscape where men approach interactions with heightened awareness of protections and precedents. Family law proceedings reflect patterns where individuals enter with clearer documentation of assets and boundaries established well in advance, reducing the scope for unexpected reallocations that characterized our earlier cases. Civil matters involving disputes show a similar trend toward preemptive clarity as men document agreements and expectations in writing, fostering environments where mutual accountability replaces ambiguity. Criminal contexts involving public interactions demonstrate lower incidence of escalation because proactive boundary maintenance minimizes opportunities for misunderstanding. These adjustments arise not from confrontation, but from a consistent application of pattern recognition that prioritizes verifiable outcomes over verbal assurances. Courts and related institutions adapt gradually as caseloads shift toward disputes rooted in mutual consent rather than presumed obligation, leading to more efficient resolutions that respect individual agency on all sides. Institutional education systems incorporate these realities by expanding programs that emphasize practical decision making and risk assessment, equipping participants with tools for navigating complex social and economic environments. Curricula evolve to include modules on financial independence, conflict navigation, and ethical self assessment, allowing students to develop frameworks that align personal choices with observable consequences. Universities and trade schools notice increased enrollment in disciplines that reward individual mastery, such as applied sciences, the skilled trades, and strategic planning fields, where progress depends on personal discipline rather than external coordination. Faculty observe that students who approach learning with this mindset demonstrate greater persistence and innovation because their motivation stems from internal standards rather than external benchmarks tied to traditional expectations. The result strengthens the pipeline of capable individuals who contribute meaningfully to society while maintaining personal equilibrium. Educational leaders who recognize this shift design support services that honor diverse pathways, including independent study tracks and mentorship opportunities that foster self directed growth. Broader civilizational perspectives reveal how such individual recalibrations influence the trajectory of collective progress over generations. Societies that accommodate varied expressions of contribution often discover unexpected reservoirs of creativity and resilience as energy, once directed toward negotiation, finds outlets in invention and problem solving. Historical parallels drawn carefully from observable records show periods where segments of the population redirected focus inward, leading to bursts of innovation in technology, philosophy, and practical arts. The current phase mirrors those dynamics in modern form, where men channeling efforts into personal projects frequently pioneer solutions that benefit wider circles through open source sharing or community application. These contributions range from advancements in sustainable living techniques to refinements in productivity tools, each emerging from the desire to enhance one's own environment and, by extension, offering value to others who seek similar autonomy. The pattern suggests that when individuals secure their own foundations, they become more effective architects of larger structures, creating a multiplier effect that elevates overall societal capability. Men rediscovering purpose through this lens often describe a profound alignment between daily actions and long term vision that transcends temporary challenges. They pursue endeavors that build lasting value, such as developing expertise in renewable energy systems or crafting educational resources that empower others to achieve independence. These pursuits provide a sense of continuity that connects present efforts to future impact, allowing men to view their choices as part of a larger continuum rather than isolated responses to immediate conditions. One individual detailed how he transitioned from a conventional career to designing modular living solutions that promote efficiency and self sufficiency, drawing on lessons from his own simplified lifestyle. His work now reaches communities seeking practical alternatives to high cost housing, demonstrating how personal insight translates into broader utility. Such examples illustrate the creative potential unlocked when energy aligns with authentic priorities rather than external demands, fostering innovations that address real needs without reliance on outdated models. Long term civilizational effects emerge as these personal and institutional shifts accumulate, manifesting in more resilient economic and social architectures. Populations that prioritize self reliance tend to exhibit greater adaptability during periods of resource fluctuation because baseline consumption remains moderate and intentional. Savings rates stabilize as individuals maintain buffers that protect against volatility, reducing dependence on centralized support systems during downturns. Innovation ecosystems benefit from diverse participants who bring grounded perspectives unencumbered by performative pressures, leading to solutions that emphasize durability and accessibility. Cultural institutions evolve to reflect this maturity, incorporating narratives that celebrate quiet competence and deliberate living, enriching the shared story of human achievement. The overall effect strengthens the fabric of society by distributing capability more evenly, encouraging cooperation based on strength rather than necessity, and creating conditions where mutual respect arises naturally from demonstrated reliability. Philosophical maturity deepens as men reflect on the interplay between individual sovereignty and collective well being, recognizing that true harmony stems from voluntary alignment rather than enforced conformity. They explore concepts of legacy through the lens of influence and example, considering how consistent living shapes environments for those who follow. This contemplation leads to deliberate practices such as documenting insights for younger generations or participating in knowledge sharing initiatives that preserve hard earned wisdom without imposing rigid doctrines. The approach honors the autonomy of others while providing reference points drawn from experience, fostering environments where learning occurs through observation and choice. Such maturity manifests in daily interactions as composure and clarity, replacing earlier tendencies toward overextension or reaction, creating spaces where dialogue flows with greater authenticity and productivity. Societal recalibration continues as various sectors integrate these patterns into operational frameworks. Healthcare systems observe improved outcomes among individuals who manage their wellness proactively, noting lower stress indicators and higher engagement with preventive practices. Policy discussions increasingly acknowledge the value of flexible structures that support independent living arrangements, recognizing that one size fits all approaches no longer align with diverse realities. Economic forecasting models incorporate data on self directed behaviors, adjusting projections to account for steadier consumption patterns and innovation driven growth. Community planning initiatives prioritize mixed. Let us continue exploring how these shifts reshape the everyday environments where people live and interact. Community planning initiatives prioritize mixed use developments that support independent living while fostering optional community connections. Urban designers incorporate features such as dedicated workshop zones, shared tool libraries, and flexible green spaces that allow residents to pursue personal projects without relying on external coordination. These designs reflect a growing recognition that individuals thrive when their surroundings accommodate both solitude and selective engagement rather than forcing constant social mixing. Neighborhood associations adapt by organizing voluntary skill exchanges where participants contribute expertise on their own terms, leading to stronger local networks built on demonstrated competence rather than obligatory participation. The overall effect creates living spaces that honor personal boundaries while still offering pathways for meaningful contribution when individuals choose to step forward. This thoughtful planning demonstrates how society can evolve to support the realities men have embraced without attempting to reverse the underlying incentives that drove their choices. From a broader civilizational viewpoint, the pattern of self directed living reveals itself as a natural corrective mechanism within human societies. Throughout observable history, periods of intense social pressure and mismatched expectations have prompted segments of the population to redirect their focus inward, resulting in renewed bursts of individual creativity that later benefit the collective. The current era follows this timeless rhythm where men who have stepped back from unbalanced dynamics now channel their capabilities into pursuits that build enduring value. They develop innovations in areas ranging from sustainable resource management to personalized education tools, each rooted in the desire to enhance their own stability and, by extension, offering practical solutions that others can adopt freely. These contributions emerge organically from lived experience rather than from top down mandates, creating a groundswell of progress that feels authentic because it arises from genuine alignment. Civilizations that allow such redirection to occur without interference tend to emerge stronger as the energy once consumed by negotiation finds expression in tangible advancements that elevate everyone willing to engage with them. Men who have walked this path often speak of an existential peace that settles in once external demands no longer dictate their daily rhythm. They describe waking each morning with a clear sense of ownership over their time and energy, knowing that every decision serves a purpose they have chosen for themselves. This peace is not passive withdrawal, but an active cultivation of inner strength where challenges become opportunities for refinement rather than sources of resentment. Stories circulate of men who, after years of navigating uncertain social landscapes, now dedicate themselves to mastering disciplines that once seemed secondary. One individual recounted transforming his backyard into a functional greenhouse that supplies his household needs while experimenting with soil regeneration techniques that could scale to larger community efforts. His days flow with purpose as he observes the direct results of his labor, feeling no pressure to justify his choices or seek approval from those outside his circle. Such accounts highlight how this peace fuels sustained motivation, allowing men to build legacies that outlast fleeting trends and provide quiet inspiration for those who witness their consistency. The permanence of the shift becomes evident when one considers the depth of pattern recognition men have developed over time. Once individuals internalize the observable outcomes of previous incentive structures, they rarely revert to patterns that previously led to imbalance. This recognition functions like an internal compass, guiding decisions toward outcomes that align with self preservation and genuine fulfillment. It explains why calls for a return to older dynamics often meet with measured detachment rather than resistance. Men have seen the full cycle of promises, expectations, and consequences, and they now operate from a foundation of clarity that no amount of external persuasion can erode. This steadfastness is not rigidity, but wisdom earned through experience, allowing them to move forward with confidence that their choices serve long-term stability for themselves and indirectly for the society they inhabit. The result is a generation that models accountability in its purest form by refusing to participate in systems that do not reward equal effort. Women who have observed and reflected on these changes over extended periods frequently describe their own strategic adaptations that emerge from honest assessment of the new landscape. Many redirect their focus toward building robust personal networks, professional expertise, and practical skills that enhance their autonomy in meaningful ways. They form alliances with like minded individuals, creating support systems based on shared goals rather than traditional dependencies. These adaptations lead to innovative approaches, such as cooperative housing models where resources are pooled efficiently, or entrepreneurial ventures that leverage individual strengths for collective benefit. The process involves a period of adjustment where initial frustration gives way to empowerment as women discover the satisfaction that comes from self mastery and deliberate choice. Their journeys parallel those of men in important respects, demonstrating that the broader cultural recalibration invites everyone to examine their assumptions and align actions with current realities. When both sides approach the future with this mindset, the potential for balanced interactions increases substantially. Economic forecasts grounded in these behavioral patterns project steady growth in sectors that cater to self sufficient lifestyles. Markets for durable tools, advanced learning resources, and efficient living solutions continue to expand as more individuals prioritize capability over consumption. Investment trends show increased interest in assets that promote independence, such as small scale production equipment or knowledge based enterprises that generate value without heavy reliance on external markets. This shift encourages innovation in areas previously overlooked, fostering competition that drives down costs and improves quality for everyone. Businesses that align with these preferences thrive by emphasizing transparency, reliability, and user empowerment, creating economic ecosystems that reward long term thinking over short term extraction. The resulting stability benefits society as a whole by reducing volatility and promoting sustainable progress that does not depend on artificial stimulation or unbalanced incentives. Philosophically, this era invites a renewed examination of what constitutes ethical living in a world of expanded individual agency. Men who have embraced self mastery often articulate a vision of responsibility that begins with oneself and radiates outward through example rather than imposition. They consider the ethical weight of their choices, recognizing that true integrity requires consistency between internal values and external actions. This reflection leads to practices that emphasize honesty in all dealings, whether in professional transactions, personal interactions, or community contributions. The approach fosters environments where trust builds naturally because it rests on verifiable behavior rather than declared intentions. Ethical maturity of this kind strengthens the social fabric by reducing the friction that arises from mismatched expectations and creating space for relationships that are entered voluntarily and sustained through mutual respect. Global perspectives on these patterns reveal that the phenomenon transcends specific cultural boundaries, even as it manifests differently across regions. In various societies where traditional roles have faced similar pressures, men have responded with comparable redirection toward personal competence and selective engagement. International discussions highlight shared observations about the benefits of self reliance in an interconnected world where economic and social uncertainties require adaptable mindsets. Cross cultural exchanges show men from diverse backgrounds finding common ground in forums dedicated to practical skills and strategic living, where language and custom yield to the universal language of demonstrated results. These global threads suggest that the underlying human incentives toward balance and autonomy operate consistently regardless of surface differences, reinforcing the idea that this shift represents a fundamental response to observable conditions rather than a localized trend. Looking further into potential futures, one can envision societies where the lessons of this period contribute to more honest and resilient social structures. Partnerships that form under these conditions tend to emphasize clarity of intention and equality of effort, leading to connections that endure because they are built on demonstrated compatibility rather than assumption. Communities gain strength from the presence of individuals who bring composure, capability, and self awareness to collective endeavors, enhancing overall problem solving capacity. Economic systems mature to support a spectrum of living arrangements from fully independent to selectively collaborative, ensuring that innovation continues while personal freedom remains protected. The dynamic equilibrium between solitude and connection becomes a source of strength rather than conflict, as each element enhances the other without diminishing its counterpart. Challenges will arise as they do in any evolving system, yet the foundational commitment to observable reality equips people to address them with effectiveness and integrity. Men who continue along this path often reflect on the legacy they are creating through their daily choices. They see themselves as stewards of a quieter form of strength where influence comes from consistency rather than visibility. This perspective encourages them to document insights, share practical knowledge, and support emerging generations through mentorship that respects autonomy. Their legacy is not measured in accolades, but in the quiet ripple effects of lives lived with purpose and peace. It manifests in the young men who observe and adopt similar approaches, in the innovations that stem from focused effort, and in the broader cultural shift toward valuing substance over spectacle. By maintaining their course, these men demonstrate that chosen paths of self mastery can enrich the world in profound yet understated ways, inviting others to consider how similar principles might apply to their own circumstances. The rhetorical power of this reality lies in its simplicity and inevitability. When incentives change, behavior follows. When experiences accumulate, wisdom deepens. When individuals align with what they observe rather than what they are told, societies recalibrate toward greater authenticity. This process does not require approval or coordination. It simply unfolds as rational agents respond to the world as it actually exists. The men who have walked away have shown through their lives that peace is attainable when one stops outsourcing fulfillment to uncertain sources. They have proven that strength emerges from within, and that true contribution arises most effectively from a foundation of self possession. Their example stands as an enduring testament to the human capacity for adaptation and growth in the face of complexity. As this narrative reaches its natural conclusion, it becomes clear that the current moment represents not an end, but a beginning of more deliberate and honest ways of living. The shifts we have examined reveal the resilience of individuals who choose to honor their own boundaries and invest in their own development. They point toward a future where relationships of all kinds stand on firmer ground because they are chosen freely and maintained through consistent action. Society benefits when people operate from positions of strength rather than scarcity, and when contributions flow from genuine alignment rather than obligation. The path men have forged through their choices offers a model of clarity that can inspire broader reflection and positive change for anyone willing to engage with it openly. Hey, shout out to the 2 Hour Gang. What did you think about what was discussed here today? Do you agree with the patterns and realities we have explored? Leave a comment on the video sharing your thoughts. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.